A few years back, my daughter Liam introduced me to the emotions wheel. It's a wheel that sort of shares lots of emotions, and it helps you identify what you're feeling. And that was surprising to me because I discovered there's more than just 4 emotions. Did you know that? I mean, I can see some people, mainly the guys, are like shocked. I thought there was just like these 4: happy, sad, angry, and hungry. But apparently, there's a lot more emotions than that, and the emotions wheel sort of shows us that emotions are far more complex than perhaps some of the emotionally challenged among us might have once thought. They're not black or white; they're nuanced. And the reality is, you can experience multiple conflicting emotions all at the same time. And to be fair, I was always aware of that because I'd often, when I'm hungry, sometimes that hunger tips over into being angry or being grumpy. Oh, there's another emotion. There's 5 emotions. And so I have this new emotion being called hangry. My wife spots it when I'm being hangry. Anybody else get hangry? Yeah, most of us. There you go. That's somewhere on the emotions wheel. And the emotions are they're complicated things that we experience that happen to us on the inside, but they seem to affect what goes on the outside. We're starting this series this morning called Inside Out, exploring the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are some famous sayings that Jesus said in a famous sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. He's standing on top of a side of a hill or mountain, and he was preaching to lots of people. And in this sermon, he lists just a bunch of these amazing sayings which we call the Beatitudes. So for the next 3 weeks, we're just going to pick 3 of those emotions, 3 of those sayings that Jesus talks about, and just unpack them and see, well, what is Jesus talking about? How do they relate to our lives? What does that mean? And hopefully by the end of it, we'll be a bit more au fait with the emotions wheel and understand some of those things. Because Jesus was talking about this over 2,000 years ago. And Jesus articulates something all those years ago that psychologists are just discovering to be true now. That the stuff that Jesus was saying was groundbreaking in its time, and it's still groundbreaking in our time. And basically what Jesus is telling us is what we feel on the inside impacts what we do on the outside. What we experience, those emotions that we have on the inside, has an impact on how we view the world around us, how we view the people around us. So emotions are not just something that happened internally. They're something that influences, and actually they impact everything that we experience externally. That's why we're talking about inside out and helping us get to grips with some of these things that Jesus was saying, and perhaps helping us get to grips with some of those things that we experience. And this series is great for you wherever you're at on your journey of faith. If you've been a follower of Jesus all your life or for many years, and actually going back to some of these key things that Jesus said and thinking, okay, yeah, I know he said that, but am I living according to that? Is that impacting and influencing how I see myself and how I live my life? I mean, that's a really helpful thing to do. But if you're someone who's curious about faith, or even somebody who's skeptical about faith and not even sure that Jesus exists or even said those things, actually we hope this stuff that we're going to look at is going to be helpful for you just to get to grips with some of that stuff that Jesus was talking about, that you can still apply it to your life today. So let's dive into the first of these sayings. And Jesus says this: blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, a guy called Matthew is writing this down. Matthew wrote one of the Gospels. At the start of the New Testament, you find these biographical accounts of the life of Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And they all do similar things. They're all sort of trying to tell us the things that Jesus said and the things that Jesus did. And when Matthew wrote his Gospel, he didn't write it in English because that language didn't really exist then. He wrote it in Greek. That was the most common language of the time. And who can speak Greek? Nick, that's it. So just otherwise, for the sake of the rest of us, people have helpfully translated these texts from Greek into English and every other language so that we can read them in our own language. Now, the challenge is it's not a straightforward process. When you translate something from an ancient language into a modern language, sometimes things can get a little bit confusing. Sometimes there's not a direct translation for that word word into this word. Sometimes, one word in that culture means something different in that culture. Sometimes, there could be multiple words that you could translate. And that's a little bit what's going on in this verse here and what Jesus is saying. You could translate these words in multiple ways. You could say that Jesus is saying, happy are those who are sad, for they will be comforted. And a lot of that sort of depends on our understanding of what do these words mean? How do we understand them, or how do we apply them in our context? What does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be sad? Our happy and sad, they're on our emotion wheel. They're already on my emotion wheel, my small emotion wheel. But even I realize that there's degrees of happiness and there's degrees of sadness. It's one thing to be happy because you got through the traffic lights before they turned red and you got where you were going on time. It's a completely different thing to be happy because somebody you love has got the all clear from their cancer screening. It's one thing to be sad because your football team loses or they don't win the Premier League because Liverpool won it. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay to be sad for those things. It's a completely different thing to be sad because you've lost somebody that you love. We know that there's degrees of these emotions. And just as you think about that happiness or being sad, which one would you rather be? Which one would you rather experience, happiness or sadness? Who would rather experience happiness? Yeah, I think who would rather experience sadness? Who couldn't be bothered to put their hand up? Yeah, a few people. That's fine. Yeah, most of it. We want to experience happiness. We want to have those happy emotions and those happy feelings. None of us really say, do you know what I want to do today? I want to be sad. No, we don't want to do that. That's a result of things that are going on in our lives. But the challenge with that, in our pursuit of happiness, we often don't understand how do we deal with sadness. What do we do with that emotion? And maybe for some of us, it makes us feeling uncomfortable when we see somebody who's sad, and we just don't know what to do because we want to fix the problem, and we don't know what to do, and our culture doesn't understand it. Certainly if you're in a British culture or you grew up in a British culture, we still live in the wake of the stiff British upper lip, where we're told that emotions are something that should just stay on the inside, and they shouldn't come out. They shouldn't, people shouldn't see your emotions, and we suppress them, and especially sadness. We're told we just need to keep push it right down and don't let anybody see what you're feeling, or don't let anybody see what you're experiencing. That is a wrong thing to do, and most of us, we know that's not right, but we still sort of live with that sort of culture in our heritage. And still, for many of us, we struggle with sadness, especially when we experience it in other people. Because again, how do we respond? What do? We want to fix it. We want to be helpful, which comes from a place of love and kindness. But the problem is, how do you fix a broken heart? How do you fix that gut-wrenching situation that when you hear about it or you see it, you're just thankful it's not you in that situation? How do you fix that? You can't fix that. But the problem is that's not enough for us. So we think, okay, I need to say something that's helpful in this situation. And often those things that we say that are helpful are not really that helpful at all. Perhaps we say something along the lines of everything will be okay. Have you ever said that? Has anybody ever said that to you? That's a statement that needs unpacking. My faith tells me that, at some point, everything will be okay. My faith tells me that in eternity, we'll experience something in the fullness of the kingdom of God, where everything is okay, where everything is in its right place, where there is no more sickness, there is no more sadness, there is no mourning, there is no pain, there is no suffering, there is no death. Everything will be okay. My faith tells me that, but part of my faith tells me that this day is not that day, and probably tomorrow is not that day as well. I know that at some point everything will be okay, but that doesn't mean that everything in this situation that I'm facing, everything in this situation that my friend is facing will be okay. And we say that from a place of wanting to help, but actually sometimes it's not that helpful at all. Maybe we say something along these lines, it's worse for other people. Has anybody ever said something like that to you? Maybe not exactly like that, but maybe you're complaining or lamenting about a situation that you're going through, and to be helpful, people try and point out that there's other people in the world that have it far worse than you. And that again comes from a place of love, a place of trying to be helpful. But all we're saying there is, you can only lament, you can only be sad, you can only mourn if you have it worse than anybody else. Then you're okay. But if you don't, okay, well, you just need to push it down and suck it up, and stop complaining, because there are people in the world that have it far worse than you. That's not a very helpful thing to say. And actually, when we hear it out loud, of course it's not a helpful thing to say, yet we still say it, or people still say it to us. There's another thing that we often say. Actually, Christians can do this, and often because, again, we want to help and we want to bring hope into a situation. So we can say things along the lines of, everything happens for a reason. It's sort of like, okay, that it's okay. What I'm going through is okay because there's some sort of cosmic or divine plan behind my suffering that I'm going through. Actually, I don't agree with this. I don't think everything happens for a reason. My faith, again, tells me that I live in a fallen, broken world surrounded by fallen, broken people, of which I am one. My faith tells me that stuff happens. You can swap out that word for something else if you want to. That we experience pain, we experience sadness, we experience suffering, and there isn't always a reason behind it other than the brokenness of the world and the brokenness of humanity. And actually, even if there is some sort of part of God's a divine plan unfolding through the suffering that you're experiencing, through that difficult situation that you're going through, it still doesn't negate the place of sadness in that moment. Even if this is part of God's plan and he's going to bring it through and everything will be okay, in that moment, in that place, when you're experiencing it, that is still a valid emotion to feel. So saying everything happens for a reason, in a way to sort of take sadness and shove her in a box again, to suppress her and keep her quiet, actually doesn't help. And just because we experience this or we feel these sort of things, doesn't mean that we or they should just pull themselves together. Anyone ever said that to you? When you're going through something along those lines, just pull yourself together, maybe a bit in a nicer way. When we try and do this, when we try and stop sadness, when we try and push her into her box and not let her out, we're not helping. We're not helping ourselves, or we're not helping the people in that situation. And actually, we're often doing more harm than good. The first Inside Out movie brilliantly portrays this. If you've not seen it, the clip that we saw at the beginning was part of that. I really recommend you watch it. You don't have to have kids to have watched the Inside Out. Actually, we went to see Inside Out 2 without any kids. That was quite fun. And they're doing Inside Out 3, I think it's about menopause. And that was a joke. I probably shouldn't have said that. That's not in my notes. Sorry, but that'll be fun. Anyway, let's get back on track. But they brilliantly portray this. Joy is trying to stop sadness because sadness is making everything blue, and she spends all her time and energy going to these great lengths to keep sadness out of the way. And actually, it makes the situation worse. And spoiler alert, she finds out that actually sadness is a valid emotion and a big part of Riley. That's the main character's life. So it's not about saying all these things or trying to stop stuff. Actually, we need to find a way that we can embrace this really important emotion. And the interesting thing is, Jesus doesn't say any of this. Jesus doesn't say everything will be okay. Jesus doesn't say pull yourself together. Jesus says, happy are those who are sad, for they will be comforted. And this word sad, again, let's just dive into those. We do tend to translate sad as mourn, because what Jesus is talking about is something far deeper than just surface level sadness. The mourning that Jesus is talking about is something that, a deep physiological thing that happens with us on the inside. And we tend to use this word to relate to people who have have lost somebody. When somebody you love dies, you go through a period of mourning. We relate it to that sort of stuff. But also, we use it to relate to like an end of a season of life. You can mourn an end of a season of life. Parents tend to mourn when their kids grow up and leave house. Some parents celebrate. That's probably a conversation for another time. But that mourning sort of shows actually something is finished. Something has ended. Maybe there's a death of a relationship or of a person or an experience. And we go through like this mourning emotion. That's what Jesus is talking about there. But again, the word that he uses is sort of trying to describe an emotion, again, that you feel on the inside, but that is expressed outwardly. That's expressed publicly. Now, again, there's culture stuff at play here. Our culture, when it comes to mourning and certainly to death, we sort of try and sanitize it and we put it again in a box and we let it out for maybe like half an hour or a day for a service of Thanksgiving or a funeral service, and then that's it. It's done again. But again, in Eastern cultures, they're far better expressing this emotion and allowing that sort of that mourning, that wailing, that lamenting to be public for people to see what is happening. But again, there's more to mourning than just actually I'm mourning something that I'm experiencing. This word is also used to talk about mourning injustice or mourning oppression. Individuals mourn at a loss of something, but communities can mourn together. Nations can mourn together. We see that so many times throughout the story of Scripture, throughout in the Bible. We see times where the whole nation of Israel are mourning, are lamenting together because of the destruction of Jerusalem when the Babylonians came in and invaded and took people away and captured the city. The nation was in mourning. Nehemiah came back and he saw the state of the walls of Jerusalem, and he went into a period of mourning, and actually he called the people around him, he called the nation to lament together for a period of time for the state of this great city and those walls. So they're seeing something going on in their world. They think, no, that isn't right. That's not how things could be. That's not how things should be. And so mourning takes on this new meaning, lamenting a situation that they see over there that maybe they're connected to, but isn't sort of like the same as somebody that they really care about dying. I wonder, when was the last time you mourned or lamented a situation that didn't directly affect you? This word is talking about something that affects us deeply, that it moves us internally, that it's not just about, sitting in our room feeling sad for a while, although that's an okay thing to do for a period of time. This is talking about something far deeper than that, something that gets us right at the core of our being, right in our gut, and either we're experiencing it personally or we're seeing something happening over there, and we're like, that's not right, that's not how things could be, that's not how things should be. So we stand with people and we allow ourselves to experience just a glimpse of what they are experiencing. And we go through that process of mourning, of lamenting. The reason, why this is so important is because when you experience something like that on such a deep level, you tend to do something about it. If something is impacting you right at the heart of your being, you don't just carry on regardless and forget about it. So when we mourn, actually because we've lost somebody, that impacts us and it changes us and we're never quite the same again. But when we think about oppression and injustice and we see the things in our world that actually are not right, and rather than just going straight into action mode, okay, let's fix that, we allow ourselves to sit in that place of mourning, that place of lamenting. I'm rubbish at that because I want to be proactive and I want to be active and I want to solve things. But Jesus says, blessed are those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. And actually, part of that is not just about the stuff I'm experiencing, it's allowing myself to experience the things that other people are experiencing and allowing myself to sort of allowing that to impact me and affect me and then do something about it. I've forgotten what my next slide is because the notes have failed and this has failed and I need to move on. There you go. So we talked a bit about, I thought we might be here. We talked about sort of that sadness, that mourning thing. We understand a bit more what that means. Let's spend a little bit of time unpacking this emotion because we're a little bit more comfortable with being happy. But then having said that, we still, let's be honest, we like to be happy. We're not always great when other people are happy, are we? We like to be happy, but we don't always like other people being overly happy. I love to play golf, and I have a great friend who I play golf with who, when I'm playing golf, he doesn't like it if I'm happy. Now, let me explain. On the very few occasions that my golf game is going well, I'm excited and, I might be chirpy and positive. And I sort of get told off for doing that because it's just not golf. You need to suppress those emotions. You shouldn't allow that show on the outside. So I'm not allowed to be happy or celebrate, yes, I hit a great shot. Wasn't that great when things are going well in golf? But I'm also not allowed to be grumpy or upset when things are going bad because that's not golf. You've just got to be robotic and those sort of things. It's a bit funny. And it's strange because in any other aspect of life, they would absolutely celebrate with me and be delighted in those good things, but not on a golf course. Maybe because I'm beating them and that's probably making them sad. But anyway, but there's other parts of life where we struggle with people who are happy or positive. Again, as a nation, our friends over the Atlantic tend to be a lot better at being positive and upbeat and have a can-do mentality. And instead, for us Brits, instead of sort of joining them in that can-do mentality, instead of joining them in that celebration, we look at them distrustingly and actually we don't like it and we sort of complain about that and think, well, that emotion is fake and that can't be real. Now, of course, we don't say that outwardly. We just suppress that and keep that inwardly because we're British and we don't talk about these sort of things. But there's this sort of degree of stuff where we're okay with here to a point, but if it goes too far the other way, then actually we become sort of suspicious of those feelings. But again, Jesus is talking about more than sort of surface level happiness. Jesus is just delving into something beyond just sort of that feeling of driving through the traffic lights and getting on time. He says the word blessed. And again, a lot of this depends on how you understand or interpret these words. But the thing about happiness in our culture, happiness is normally tied to external circumstances. So if good things are happening, then I am happy. And if good things aren't happy, well, then I can't experience that happiness because it's dependent on what's happening. What happens makes you happy or not. But being blessed is far deeper than that. People often say when they're describing their family, I'm blessed with 3 kids. And you're obviously not happy because you've got 3 kids. But I'm blessed because there's a deeper level on that. But this is sort of talking about something that's far deeper than that surface level emotion. To be blessed is to be grounded in God's presence regardless of what is going on around you. To be blessed is to be aware of God with you in every situation, irrespective of those external circumstances. And through these Beatitudes, we're going to read 3 of them through this series, but there's a whole load more of them, and really encourage you to read them for yourselves. Jesus starts off each one, he says, blessed it, or blessed are. And as he's saying each of these statements, he's sort of like pointing to people in the world who actually, by worldly standards, are not happy because the things that they're experiencing or how he's characterizing, blessed are people who are mourned because they will be comforted. You wouldn't think that's the case, but he's pointing at people who are facing real difficulties and saying that they're blessed, that they're happy in that truer, deeper sense of the words. Well, why is that? Well, it's because, the presence of God is with them regardless of the situation, that they're experiencing something that's far greater than momentarily happiness because of an external factor. They're experiencing the nearness of God. And when Jesus talked about this, he absolutely confronted the culture of the world around him. The culture of their time said, you're happy, you're blessed if you have lots of things. If you're prosperous, then that comes with, blessing comes with that. Our culture says the same things. So this stuff that Jesus said all those years ago pushed back against his culture, and they're pushing back against our culture as well. He says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. These are opposite emotions on our emotion wheel. And the reality is we're able, when we're able to experience both, when we're able to experience all of the positive things are being blessed, with all of the, let's say, the negative emotions, but that's not quite the right one, but hopefully you understand what I mean by that. When we experience all the positive things that come with being blessed, alongside all the negative things that come with mourning and sadness, we're able to actually experience goodness in that for a bunch of reasons, but I just want to highlight two of them. Firstly, we're able to do that because mourning is the bridge between pain and restoration. Actually, this sadness, this mourning, allowing ourselves to sit in that place of lament and not trying to push it down or push it away, actually creates space for us to deal with what's going on inside us and to respond and reflect to what's going on around us. When we suppress it, that doesn't help. All it does is delay it. And actually, it makes it a lot bigger because at some point that emotion and that experience is going to come out. And if we don't deal with it at the time, we just suppress it and it festers, and bitterness and loads of other really damaging negative emotions can come into play, which really have an impact on us. So actually embracing sadness, embracing mourning, embracing lament is a good thing to do. You know, we learn that from the Inside Out movies, but we first learned it from Jesus. He's the person who told us about this. You know, and this is the first step to actually experiencing blessing through these difficult situations. All of us can do this. You don't have to be a Jesus follower to do that. You can actually be willing to embrace that emotion, whatever you think about who Jesus is or not. But and that's a good thing to do. I encourage you to do that. But that will only bring you so far. You know, you won't experience the fullness of what Jesus is talking about. You won't experience the fullness of that blessing without the second part. And that's this: God comforts us in our distress. The thing about sadness and mourning and lament and those situations that bring it is that God meets us there. God meets us in the midst of it. You know, Jesus meets us in the place of pain and suffering. And what does he do with us there? Well, he doesn't try and make us feel better. He doesn't try and he doesn't say empty platitudes or give us empty promises. He doesn't try and say things like pull yourself together and suppress the emotion. He actually helps us journey through that place of pain and suffering to the other side. You know, not to get back to the beginning, but back to the new normal that is only possible because of experiencing whatever it is that we're experiencing or encountering. You know, that we've got to go through it. It's a bit like that old, or that kid's book. We're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. What a beautiful day. 3 people knew that. That's great, yeah. And they're going on and they come across, oh no, grass, tall, wavy grass. We can't go around it, can't go over it, can't go under it. Oh no, we've got to go swishy, swashy, swishy, swashy, swishy, swashy. You know it, don't you? So it's like that, but there's an extra, if you flick over the page, there's an extra bonus chapter. You might not have seen it. So like, we're going on a bear hunt, we're going to catch a big one. What a beautiful day, we're not scared. Oh no, morning. Can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. Oh no, we've got to go. Sob, 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 sob. All right, maybe miss out that bonus chapter when you read it to the kids. You're looking at me like I've totally lost my mind. The whole thing about like this stuff that Jesus is talking about is you can't avoid it. You can't circumvent it. You can't find a way to not go through it, because all you do is then you just stay here, and you're not embracing that emotion, you're not dealing with that emotion, and you become emotionally challenged because you're stunted by that. And Jesus sort of stands in the midst of the place of pain, and he says, "Let's go through it together." You know, there's only one way. You can't stay here, because if you stay here, well, you don't experience any of the blessing that can come from that. You don't experience any of the learning or the development or any of those stuff. But let me take your hand and let me walk with you through whatever it is that you're going through, whether that's something you're experiencing for yourself or something that you're seeing in the world and thinking actually something needs to change there. Jesus meets us in that and he helps us through it to the other side. Maybe you're wondering about, well, how do I do that? We'll come to that in a minute because there's this verse first. Because he's talking about, look, blessed are those who mourn because they'll be comforted. A guy called Paul who wrote lots of the letters in the New Testament, wrote this to the church in Corinth. It's actually his second letter that he wrote to them. And it's sort of kicking off. It's like in the first verse 3 and 4 of chapter 1. So it's right at the beginning of this letter. And he says, "Praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our trouble so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." Lots of comforts going in there. Paul, this sets the tone for the rest of the letter. And, praise God, who the Father of compassion, the God, he's a God of comfort. And what does he do? Well, he comforts us in the midst of our trouble. Why does he do that? Well, one, because he wants us to experience blessing, to be able to journey through it because he loves us, but also so that we can comfort those in any trouble with what? With the comfort we've ourselves received from God. Now, that's part of the reason why if we just allow ourselves to embrace sadness and mourning, that's a good thing to do, but it only brings us so far. But if we allow Jesus to meet us in that and journey us through to the other side, actually we experience the fullness of the comfort that God has for us, which is a good thing. I want that. But then also I'm able to actually help you experience the fullness of the comfort that God has for you, because I've experienced it and I've gone through it through there as well. I'm able to experience that presence of God with me in the midst of this difficult, soul-destroying, heartbreaking situation. But I'm able to say, you know what? It's okay. Even though I'm facing this, even though I'm experiencing this, even though I've got to go through this, and let's be honest, I would rather not. I would rather not experience whatever it is that I'm experiencing. But even when I have to, I'm able to say, it's okay. Not because I have the strength to get through it, but because Jesus is standing right in the middle of it and he's helping me through. And I can see actually that I'm so much better for these things. And you might be wondering yourself, well, that's great, but how do I actually do this? How do I allow God to meet me in that place of sadness? How do I allow God to meet me in that place of pain and help me journey through it? On the hub, we've just put together a little resource with just some headings of how you can do this. And it's quite straightforward. It's not rocket science, but I really encourage you to do that. You can find that on the digital hub. So finchampstead.com/the-hub. There'll be a little card that talked about this, how to be happy when you're sad. And there's just some steps in there. I encourage you to take a look at that. That will only be up there for like the next couple of weeks, and then we'll take it down. See, the thing is, none of us want to face these situations. We want to avoid them if we can, but we can't. I'm so thankful that I've not had too many of these, utterly gut-wrenching, heartbreaking situations. But I realize as I look back that Jesus has met me in each and every one of them. But the thing actually that as I've reflected on them, I realize that it's not that Jesus meets me necessarily in the pain. I get there and I cry out to God and he comes. Somehow, if you can get your head around this, he was there before me. Somehow he was there waiting for me, because he knew what was going to happen. He's going to knew what was going to go through. And despite my best efforts to try and suppress and avoid, he holds out his hand and says, "Chris, come with me. Let's journey through this together to the other side." I don't like it. I wouldn't choose it, but it's okay. And part of that is part of looking forward to that glorious day when all of this pain, all of this sadness, all of this sickness, all of this suffering, all of this death, all of this injustice is taken away, when Jesus finally calls time, and that's it. And, I don't know what that looks like. There's so much in that we just haven't got time to unpack, but my faith and my hope tells me that day is coming, and there'll be no more pain. There'll be no more suffering. There'll just be joy and life and light. And I look forward to that day. But I know that this day is not that day. And I know that tomorrow probably isn't that day. So today, I say it's okay. Today, I say it is well. We're going to get the band back up on stage just as we wrap up that time. And that song, I've just alluded to a song there. It is well with my soul. It's a great old hymn that the guy who wrote it experienced absolutely just unfathomable pain and heartache and the situations that went through, but was able to say, it's okay. It is well with my soul. You know, I don't like it. I wouldn't choose it, but it's okay. And I just want to invite you, as we sing this song, that maybe you're going through something like that. Maybe there's stuff in your life that you wouldn't choose, and maybe you're trying to avoid it. If you're able to, you know, actually from the depth of your being, say to God, it's okay. It is well with my soul, because I know that you're there. I know that you meet me in it. I know that you were waiting for me, and I know that you'll help me journey through it to the other side. I know that I'll be blessed. I know that I will be comforted. Let's stand to our feet and let me pray for us.